Okay, good morning ICS3U and ICS4U. This is a very quick video just to explain functions. So basically with functions, the whole idea is that if you have a block of code, you can create a function for it. So here's my program. So there's my main method. You'll notice that when I click beside this bracket, it shows me where this ends. So if I click here, I am going to be outside of the main method, but I'm still inside of the class. So I can create a method, and for grade 11s, we're always going to use public. And the other thing is that if we are creating a method in a console program, which is what we're doing if we're using repl.it, which some of you are going to have to use, then you always need to include the word static, because what happens is that when the program runs, this runs, and once all this code is done, it finishes the program and it's done. Whereas with the Windows program, you do have a main method that is creating an instance of your window, and then as long as your window is open, all the different methods run. So your function in a window is the same. So static for console programs, it's not required for Windows programs. The other thing is your return type. So if I want to return an integer, I'm going to use the int keyword. The other thing is what you want to do is give it a name. So let's say I'm going to have a method called getArea. Now, an getArea is going to probably need two values. So I can use int length and int width for my function. Now, I have squiggly brackets after that, and all of this code is going to happen. So in here, I'm going to take a variable called intArea, and I am going to calculate it, length times width, and then I am going to return that value. And this is the really key thing, is that when you have a return type, you always have to include the capability to return the value. So that's a really important piece. So in my main method, I can now call this. So I can create an integer, and I'm going to get area 5 and 7. So this will return that value, and what I'm going to do now is I can output that. And just like that, if I run this, I should get 35. There it is. So what happens, this line of code runs, so hello world. It declares a variable called a that is an integer data type. Then it assigns the value of getArea 5 by 5, 7. So that will now run this function. So in this function, I will create a variable. I'm assigning it the value. Because I've passed these, it's going to take 5 and 7 to pass them, and then it's going to return this, which is how that gets assigned that value. Then here I'm outputting it. That's all there is to it. I'm just going to demonstrate in here, and I've got my window. So a couple key things. It gets a little bit busy. What I find is that my last squiggly brace is my namespace, my last squiggly brace is the class. So what I try to do is go to my second last and then go in there. So here I can do public. Now, as I said, I'm in a Windows program, so I don't need the word static. I do need the return type. And if I don't want a return type, then I use the word void. So void does not return any value. So getArea, and everything else is pretty much the same. And you'll see this is squiggly braces, and the red part has an error, and you'll see not all code pass return of values. So that's until I have my return statement. So I'm just going to return 3 to begin with, but I'm going to fix that. I'll get that error. So now I can take my variables and calculate the area. And right here, I can return A. There we go. And wherever I want to call this particular function, I can call it here. So int A equals at area 5 and 7. And you'll notice with this, one thing that I do want to point out, length and width are local to this function. So they only exist within this function. I cannot access those values by going width. It simply doesn't exist. That's a really important thing to keep in mind. So, and I'm just going to do a message box, a.toString. There we go. So if I run this program, it's going to create the window, initialize it, set A to get area, and it's going to return that value, and then it's going to run it. So that's basically the rundown. There's 35. That's what I was looking for. That's the rundown of how to use a function, and I'll be going over some more details later.